Don't get me wrong, this guy was already pretty strong before, but with the new changes to Death to the False Emperor, Abaddon the Despoiler is just so much more dangerous. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking Chaos, and today I thought we'd do a unit review for Abaddon the Despoiler, the War Master of the Black Legion and the Architect of the Fall of Cadia. His recent new miniature is still looking great. I think most people would agree it's looking pretty nice and menacing for the primary antagonist in Warhammer 40k, and it's quite nice that his in-game rules are suitably lethal to match. I already did a video a few weeks back about that Black Legion list that took a grand tournament. Abaddon was certainly a key figure in that, but now he might be getting a lot more relevant as a melee buff piece and not just a ranged one. Not only that, but his own combat proficiency has just gone to the absolute next level, and I thought in this video we'd take a look over his datasheet, talk about the massive amount of extra buffs that he can give for chaos units, and see how much crazy damage he can unleash himself when he does catch up with an enemy unit. First up the datasheet though, and Abaddon the Despoiler is a 220 point HQ choice for Codex Chaos Space Marines. Keywords wise, he's an infantry Terminator character, hails from the dreaded Black Legion, and kind of interestingly on his datasheet he has the faction keywords Khorne, Nurgle, Slanesh and Tzeentch, which can be pretty handy for a few buffs and things, meaning he can make use of some of the stratagems and psychic powers across the Chaos Pantheon. At 220 points he is a pretty pricey character, over twice the cost of many Chaos Lords, but the sheer amount of fight and command abilities that he brings to the table seems like it's quite worth it. His stat line is beefy, he moves 6 inches, weapon skill and ballistic skill 2+, he's got a big strength and toughness 5, a huge 8 wounds, 6 attacks, leadership 10 and a 2+ armor save, augmented by a 4+ invul from his Dark Destiny. Not only that, but he also halves the damage of incoming attacks as well. That means that he's particularly resistant to things like damage 2 attacks, and usually the things that are going to be best at killing him are things with excessively high damage, things like damage D3+3 or melter weapons within half range. Wargear wise, he's armed with Dracnian and the Talon of Horus. The Talon can be fired a bit like a combi bolter for strength 4 AP-1 and D3 damage, and it is a fairly decent melee weapon in its own right, putting him up to strength 10 AP-4 D3 damage, though to be honest it's Dracnian that really is the main event. He'll be strength 6, AP-3, damage 3, and he has a really quite cool special rule. Before you strike with it, you get to roll a d6. On a 1 he takes a mortal wound and he can't use the weapon that turn, he'll have to strike with the Talon instead. But on a 2+ he gets that many extra attacks against the enemy. That means that when you combine his 6 attacks with Hateful Assault and the potential 6 extra attacks with this, you could have up to 13 attacks coming out of him, all at strength 6 and damage 3. We'll get on to just how much carnage that can cause later. Otherwise, as War Master, if he's your Warlord you get an extra 2 command points, a really nice incentive to make him that. He can teleport into battle as a Terminator, and then he's got a trio of really good buffing abilities which we'll go through now. First up, and perhaps least impressively, he does grant Ignores Morale to Heretic Astartes within 12 inches. I guess that's kind of okay, perhaps most relevant on Chaos Cultists with their low morale and quite big squads. I guess in theory could be quite intimidating if he had some big units of them. Even if 1 or 2 models survive the enemy fire, they're not going to run, and then you could tide of traitors them next turn. Really though, the main event is his reroll hit rolls for Black Legion within 6 inches, one of the last similarly powerful auras of its kind. The vast majority of other buffing characters like this have been changed so they have to just nominate 1 unit to reroll full hit rolls, and usually they can only do it to core units, but Abaddon doesn't have either of those restrictions, as of course Chaos don't have their 9th edition decks yet. It means that you can make him into a truly powerful little gun castle buff, you can get multiple big fire support platforms, put them within 6 inches of him, and those sweet hit rerolls generally add up to an extra 3rd damage output for any shooting units within range. It does incentivize you to castle quite hard I guess, but the sheer extra firepower could easily be worth it. Maybe some of the better choices are things like Chaos Contemptor Dreadnoughts, either with Volkites or Las Cannons, Black Legion Noise Marines, maybe firing twice with Endless Cacophony, Forge World Decimators with their mortal wounds, or even things like Obliterators, Havocs, Venom Crawlers or Defilers. Basically if it shoots somewhat good, it will shoot a lot better with Abaddon nearby. That basically looked like the whole basis of that Black Legion list that won the Grand Tournament recently. Now though, his Warlord trait becomes incredibly interesting indeed. If he is your Warlord, which he might well be for the extra 2 CP, he grants a buff to Death to the False Emperor, making it go off on a 5+ rather than a 6. That used to be kind of okay, helpful against Imperial armies and worthless against everything else, but now Games Workshop has changed the rules for that. It means that not only do the attacks just generate an extra hit, you don't have to roll for the second one to see if it succeeds, but also it works against every faction in the game, not just Imperium. Chaos seem to be equally angry at everything now. Usually on most Chaos units hitting on a 3+, that's going to be an extra 25% damage output against everything. With Abaddon's buff to make it go off on a 5+, then that instead means that it's usually going to be an extra 50% damage increase. And when you take into account that Abaddon can also allow you to reroll all hit rolls as well, between the two buffs, it usually means that damage output for Chaos units is actually going to be doubled. Say for example, if we had 5 Black Legion Terminators with Combi Bolter and Lightning Claw, those Terminators charged in, they'd usually kill around about 12 Guardsmen or 3 or 4 Space Marines. Between Abaddon's full rerolls to hit and the exploding 5s and 6s, that would go up to killing around about 7 Space Marines or a massive 24 Guardsmen. That's going to be very similar for most other melee units that you get in range, whether it's Possessed, Khorne Berserkers or something else. Though actually in terms of a percentage increase, it's going to be even better on anything that hits on a 4+, say things like Demon Engines. Basically there aren't really any Black Legion units that don't want to be within Abaddon's buffing aura. Ranged units get an awesome reliable damage boost, and any melee units that you can get in there will usually get double damage or more. What he can buff really is only one half of the story though, as of course Abaddon has such brutal melee power that you could pretty much justify his inclusion just on the raw damage that he can do, never mind all his command abilities. As we said, with Dracnian he's usually going to be getting 7 to 13 attacks, and with Death to the False Emperor going off on 5s, it makes sense for him to reroll everything that's not a 5+ in the chance of fishing for more exploding 5s. Accounting for Dracnian's random attacks and the chance of it failing, that will usually mean between Death to the False Emperor and his rerolls, he will actually get more attacks than he started out with, and average a crazy 14 to 15 Strength 6, AP-3 and Damage 3 hits. That's not something that virtually anything in 40k wants to get in the way of. Just on average in a single fight phase, that accounts for around about 12 Guardsmen, 8 Marines whether they're Gravis or normal sized ones, or 12 wounds to a Toughness 7 or 8 vehicle without an invul save, though he could use Veterans of the Long War to bump that up to an average of 18. Then, if that's somehow not quite enough for you, he can fight again for 3 CP if you're feeling spendy, as he does have the Khorne keyword. That's pretty hilarious strength for a 220 point investment, particularly one that's going to get so much more out of your other units. Toughness wise, perhaps things aren't quite so overwhelming, though to be honest, for a character he's certainly not easy to shift, and hopefully you could usually keep him screened from most threats. On average, to bring him down you're going to need 72 bolt rifle hits, 48 heavy bolter hits, or 12 las cannons or 6 Eldari dark lancers. Generally he's just not going to be too troubled by small arms. Damage 2 firepower will have its efficiency cut in half, but anything that's d6 or above will give him a bit more of a pause. Potentially, if you do know that he's going to be taking quite a bit of fire, if you have a sorcerer nearby, you can maybe give him either Delightful Agonies or Weaver of Fates. That's a 5+ Feel No Pain or a 3+ Invul, and both of those are seriously solid buffs on top of already halving damage. Probably not going to be the main reason that you want a sorcerer around, but it could be good to layer him up with before he goes charging off at a key threat. So overall, for his 220 points, I think that Abaddon the Despoiler is pretty much all-round excellent. He's already good at souping up units both at range and in melee, and now with the Death to the False Emperor bit being even better, he's even more of a melee buffing character, and he's far more of a melee beatstick than he was before. I have to say, perhaps the biggest downside to fielding Abaddon the Despoiler is that it's going to kind of tie you to Black Legion, who, while they do have their tricks, I just don't really feel they're one of the stronger Chaos Legions for their own merit. I'd say their core Legion trait is arguably the worst out of them. +1 leadership is a bit underwhelming in the first place, and then the other bit is only to allow rapid-fire weapons to count as assault weapons if you advance, something you're usually not going to want to do, as it's often going to cut your shots in half and make you less accurate. They do have a few interesting stratagem buffs, Chosen of the Pantheon to give different Chaos marks out as needed, the pricey 3 CP World Killers, which could potentially allow you to swipe an objective over an opponent sometimes. I guess it's not too bad to pretty much guarantee trading 3 CP for 5 victory points, 1 CP for +1 attack if you outnumber the foe, and 1 CP for re-rolling hits with the closest unit to the enemy in the shooting phase, though I guess if that unit already happens to be something that's buffed by Abaddon, then it's a bit moot. A couple of their warlord traits are kind of interesting. Trusted War Leader for a bit of CP regeneration on top of Abaddon's extra 2 CP could be quite a lot, and they've got a couple of bits of nice war gear in the Angel's Bane boosted Combi Bolter and Gorisvex's Teeth, the Relic Chainsword that's got quite a good mortal wound output. It potentially can be quite a lot of mortal wounds with Death to the False Emperor. I do feel like some of those are kind of useful, though maybe just a little bit generic and don't really lend themselves to any one style of play. If Abaddon wasn't tied to the Black Legion, I'd be far more wanting to run him with someone else though. Still though, even with the Black Legion maybe not being the strongest out of the various Chaos options, I still think having Abaddon along is a really massive asset to a list and could easily be enough for you to pick up the Black Legion instead of some of the other various Traitor Legions. I guess you wouldn't even necessarily have to go pure Black Legion either. You could maybe have Abaddon leading some Terminators and some firepower in one part of the list, then maybe another part with say some Demon Engines from Iron Warriors, or some Noise Marines or something in Emperor's Children. In any case, overall, if you just want to put Abaddon on the table and lay siege to the Imperium of Man, he seems to be better than ever, already a really strong character before, and now both his buffing abilities and his own combat prowess have gone absolutely through the roof, and he is going to be a force to be reckoned with on the other side of the table. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. Will Abaddon be enough to see more people experimenting with Black Legion, or do other combos like Emperor's Children or Iron Warriors still hold the top spot for Chaos Space Marines? If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, with new ones out just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying the videos on the channel and you'd like to help keep them coming, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have an Element Games affiliate link, which you can find down in the video description below. If you live in the UK and you were thinking about picking up any models in the near future, Element Games is a very decent discount retailer. They usually give 10 to 20% off Games Workshop's miniatures, and if you order anything after clicking the link, a small amount goes to help support Auspex Tactics without costing you any more whatsoever. Could just be something to think about if you were thinking about buying something at some point soon. Otherwise, for people over in the USA and Canada, there is also an Amazon affiliate link down there as well. Again, that one works in much the same way. Click the link, buy anything whatsoever, and a small amount goes to help support the channel without costing you more. A really big thank you to you folks who have been using that on things that you buy. And in any case, an absolutely massive thank you for listening. I'll hope to see you guys next time.